Attorney General Letitia James has never backed down from a fight. As a city councilwoman, she tried to prevent Michael Bloomberg from serving a third term. And in her current job, she filed sexual harassment charges against then-Governor Andrew Cuomo and brought civil fraud charges against former President Donald Trump. The Point starts right now. Tish James is the 67th Attorney General of New York State, and given all the big battles she's fought, I've always wanted to ask her which one was the toughest and gave her the most sleepless nights. So you have taken on the high and the mighty, from Michael Bloomberg to Andrew Cuomo to Donald Trump. Which of these battles that you have fought have been the most difficult and have given you the most sleepless nights?
Well, first, Marsha, thank you for having me on your show again. I really appreciate it. And thank you for covering me through the years. The one case, the one issue that kept me up at night is the opioid crisis. I can recall during the campaign, traveling all throughout the state, hugging parents and mothers and fathers and grandparents over open caskets. It was the opioid crisis, and I made a commitment to them that if I became the Attorney General, I would hold them accountable, and that's exactly what we did. We filed the most extensive and comprehensive lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors, and as you know, we were able to settle that case to the tune of $2.8 billion, and those funds are being distributed as we speak. And so that's what keeps me up. Our work is still undone. We still have a lot of work to do, but unfortunately there's new drugs on the street, fentanyl and xylazine, which is an animal tranquilizer.
Well, I was going to ask you about the xylazine because that's your next battle, because as people don't understand, it's a veterinary tranquilizer, but people are taking it. Explain it and explain why it's such a bad thing.
So it's, it's an animal tranquilizer, a horse tranquilizer, and it's legal. And what we are trying to do is get Congress to pass a law that was introduced that would put it on a schedule as unfortunately a drug that's prohibited. And individuals are taking it and they're using it to cut their drug of choice, if you will. And unfortunately, it's resulting in overdoses, and it's resulting in individuals losing their limbs because it eats away at your skin.
So how can we stop it?
So what we are, again, trying to do is ask Congress to put it on a schedule so that it can be considered a controlled substance, so that we can monitor it, and so that we can make sure that individuals are not diverting it from its use, and we can educate. And what we are doing right now is educating individuals about the harms of xylazine and all of the other drugs that are out there, xylazine and fentanyl and opioids in general.
But xylazine is manufactured here.
Yes, it is.
So that makes it even more difficult, because like other drugs are coming into the country, you could try to interdict them at the border, but yeah. This one you can't.
No, this is, like I said, it's a legal drug, and individuals use it as an animal tranquilizer. Unfortunately, you can purchase it online. You can purchase it from a veterinarian, and individuals are diverting it for personal use. And what we really need to do is train and educate the medical profession and all of those out there, and parents in general, and schools also, about the dangers of illegal drug use, including but not limited to opioids, xylazine, and fentanyl.
So one of the other drugs that I'd like to talk to you about is something that's a very big concern to women in New York, and that is the pill that people can take that would create an abortion. A judge in Texas tried to stop the FDA from allowing it to be legal. What are you doing to try to help women so that they can have access to this abortion pill?
Thank you for that question. First, it's important that everyone know that reproductive rights are alive here in the state of New York. We respect a woman's right to choose and the right to have an abortion. Mifepristone is the drug that is used for medical abortions. Actually, there are two drugs. It's miso and mifepristone. But mifepristone is the one that the vast majority of individuals are using to have abortions. And right now, as you mentioned, a Texas judge decided to substitute his view of the world, his conservative view of the world, for 20 years of experience and 20 years of medical information and expertise. He's a conservative judge, unfortunately. He's a religious judge, unfortunately, and as a result of judge shopping, they were able to get this judge and, unfortunately, issue a poor ruling. That decision was appealed to the appellate division in the fifth district that covers Texas. The United States Supreme Court decided to punt on it, and so we are awaiting a decision. But I want everyone to know here in the state of New York that reproductive rights are protected and respected here. We respect a woman's right to choose, to have autonomy over her own body, and we will not allow individuals, obviously, to impose their views on the countless number of Americans who support reproductive rights.
But here's the question. If the judge's ruling stands and the FDA is prevented from making it legal, how will women get that drug in order to get a medical abortion?
What will happen is that they will challenge FDA's procedure, and the FDA will have to basically go through more trials, more experience, and more tests with respect to mifepristone. But again, we support the FDA. We support a woman's right to choose. We are stockpiling mifepristone and miso here in the state of New York. I want to thank Governor Hochul for stockpiling miso. We need to do more, obviously, and we need to, again, stand up and support a woman's right to choose here in the state of New York and across the nation. And as you know, I've established a task force with 20 of the largest law firms. We've reached out to others. This is a safe haven here in the state of New York for anyone who seeks to have an abortion.
But I know that the governor, as part of her budget, tried to make it legal for clinics on SUNY campuses and college campuses to stock the drug. Will they be able to get enough of it so that if there is a need, people will be able to make use of it?
Again, we are working with the governor of the state of New York to stockpile mifepristone and miso, and that's really important. And we are confident that, again, at the end of the day, the FDA will be approved to distribute this medical drug, again, which is safe, which has been tested, which millions and millions of Americans have taken, and it's proven itself to be a very effective drug for individuals who seek to have an abortion.
Do you think that the abortion issue will be a big factor in the congressional race and the presidential race next year?
Yes, because the vast majority of Americans in this country support privacy and support a woman's right to choose.
So can a candidate who is against the availability of an abortion actually prevail in this country, in your opinion?
I think it will be difficult, particularly if more and more individuals come out, if women come out and vote on this single issue. That's really critically important. Individuals cannot be free if they do not have full autonomy over their own bodies, and therefore women are not free. And so it's really critically important that individuals stand up and support a woman's right to choose and having full autonomy over their body, and reject those individuals who seek to hold us hostage.
And one of the reasons that I asked this question is because during the last congressional races, a number of Republicans in New York prevailed, and many of them support are not supportive of abortion rights. So do you think that that could be a factor in helping to overturn those seats for Democrats and also help turn the House back into Democratic control?
So, Marsha, as you know, during our last congressional race, during the last congressional races, the issue was security and personal security and bail reform here in the state of New York. And that was the issue: crime, crime, crime. And unfortunately, we did not push back on crime, and we did not stand up and support law enforcement here in the state of New York and beyond. And so I think this year the issue will be reproductive rights and freedom for women. And that's what is so critically important. And individuals really need to vote their conscience and, again, support a woman's right to choose, to have full autonomy over her body.
Okay, it's time for a break. We'll be right back. You survived the first. We're back with New York Attorney General Tish James. You know, one of the things that's a big issue in the legislature right now is the clean slate bill, which is working its way through the legislature. As we understand it, it would give people who've been convicted of a misdemeanor the right to have a clean slate after 3 years and a felony 7 years. I wonder how you feel about it.
So as the Attorney General of the state of New York, my responsibility is to defend the state, and I will be defending this law, assuming it's passed. I recognize that there are some individuals concerned about the category of crimes that are included in the clean slate bill, but my position is if individuals who have committed nonviolent crimes and have done their service to society, they should be given a second chance. I believe in second chances, and so I would hope that the New York State Legislature would pass the bill and that the governor of the state of New York would sign the bill.
And then you'll have to enforce the bill.
And I'll have to enforce the bill.
Another big question, another big problem for New York is the tens of thousands of asylum seekers who have come here, and there have been numerous attempts by people outside of New York City in the other counties to stop New York City from sending people there. I wonder how you feel about that and what we should be doing to help the migrants come to New York and assimilate into our society.
So one, it's important that New Yorkers understand and recognize that this is a nation of immigrants. It was founded upon immigrants. And so it's also important that individuals understand what is on the Statue of Liberty. And so migrants are coming to our country and coming to our city. And there are counties in upstate New York that have sued not only New York City, but also New York State. We are defending, again, the law in the state of New York and basically urging that individuals get around a table and hopefully welcome some of these immigrants, provide the services for some of these immigrants. New York City is going to compensate these counties for housing these immigrants. But most importantly, it's important that immigrants have the right to work, that they be designated temporary protective status, TPS. And I'm urging Congress and the President of the United States to do just that. They don't want a handout. They want to work.
Well, see, I'm very concerned about that myself, because the right to work is forcing some of these people who have come here into what you might call a black market, where they're getting jobs, but because they're not legal in the sense, they're being paid less and they're not getting health benefits. Is that a concern, and how do we stop that? How do we make the case to Congress that this is just wrong?
And that's so important because people are taking advantage of them. Their rights are being violated. You know, we have taken some cases where we've heard from some migrants who are not being paid for minimum wage. They were not being paid. Unfortunately, their rights were being violated. They were the victims of fraud, and some of their paychecks were stolen. And so we did prosecute, brought civil charges against some individuals, and were able to get them their back pay. However, there's certain aspects of the law that don't apply to them, and it's so critically important that as the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New York, that their rights be protected and defended. And that's why it's important that the United States Congress authorize and extend to them TPS, temporary protective status, so that they can work, and so that we can protect and defend their rights and contribute to our tax base here in the state of New York.
One of the things that we were talking about in the break was the crime in New York and crime throughout the state. And I know guns coming into New York are a big problem. How do we stop it?
Great question. The overproliferation of guns. Gun violence happens each and every day. Just last night, there were 3 incidents in the Bronx. And what we need to do is, again, we need a universal gun control. And we need to ban assault weapons. There's no need for an assault weapon. And so most recently, we held a gun buyback. And on one given day, all throughout the state, we took off the streets of New York State 3,000 guns. And since I've been the Attorney General, we have removed over 7,000 guns. 1, through gun buybacks, 2, through enforcement, takedowns, working with law enforcement all throughout the state of New York, individuals who engage in gun trafficking and drug trafficking, focusing on gangs and individuals who want to bring harm to residents of New York State. And then lastly, challenging and bringing lawsuits against gun manufacturers and individuals who market guns online and who market ghost guns and assault weapons. We're going after them. We've already sued 10. We have others that we are pursuing. This, again, will help bring down, address gun violence in the state of New York, and keep us all safe. And it's important that individuals understand that the #1 threat to children are guns.
But ghost guns seem to be a problem that we can't seem to get our arms around, because you can order them online. There's no way to know whether they're coming into the state, where they're coming from, or who's making them. They could even be made in your basement or in your garage.
And what we are doing is focusing on those individuals, distributors and manufacturers of ghost guns online. So we have a team of individuals who are scouring the internet, looking for individuals who are selling, or businesses that are selling ghost guns, which do not have any serial numbers and pose a threat to law enforcement. We will prosecute them, working with DOJ and other attorney generals across this nation.
But what about the idea of putting serial numbers on bullets, so that you'd be able to go after them as well? Microchipping, I think it's called.
Yes, and that bill, there is a bill that was passed in the state legislature, and the state government obviously needs to enforce that law and to ensure that all of the bullets that are sold here in the state of New York are microchipped with a serial number, again, protecting law enforcement and making it easier for us to solve some of the crimes that are committed here in the state.
So I want to talk to you about a personal peek.
Okay.
Just before we started taping the show, I got a robocall. Drives me nuts, because sometimes it looks like a number that you know, or at least has an area code that you recognize, or it's similar to your own cell phone, or it says, you know, you don't know who it is. So how do they get through, and how come you can't stop it?
So, great question. You know, the more and more I talk to seniors and to others, robocalls are #1 problem here in the state of New York. And most recently, we settled a national case against a company that was basically selling your telephone number, your personal data, to their customers, and they were engaging in robocalls against us.
How can we stop them from getting our phone numbers?
Well, it's again protecting your data and protecting your privacy. And it's also important to know that the cell phone that you use, the laptop that you use, there are companies that are monetizing your privacy and your personal data. But in terms of those robocalls oftentimes are coming from international sources, and so we're working with the federal government to stop robocalls. And some of these robocalls basically scam senior citizens and other vulnerable
Well, what
individuals.
about the IRS scam that's specifically targeting senior citizens?
Yeah, we're focusing on that. They target senior citizens, basically saying that their relatives, their loved ones have been taken hostage. They're targeting senior citizens, saying that if you don't give them money, their Medicaid will be stopped. And so what we do, working with AARP and a number of other allies, is to educate seniors, is to do phone calls with them to let them know what they should look out for, and again, to target those companies that are engaging in robocalling, which is the bane of our existence.
So what should the seniors do? We have about 30 seconds up, but what advice do you give them? Don't take any of these calls seriously?
I would urge any senior citizen or any individual who gets one of these robocalls, one, to write down the number, and two, to call the office of the New York State Attorney General at 1-800-771-7755 so that we can investigate. We've got investigators and detectives who are on staff, and again, we want to work with individuals on the ground to stop these annoying robocalls, particularly to senior citizens.
I would take that as a personal point of personal privilege. I hate them. Anyway, we have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.